So I always felt a recession, and listen, I don't want them. I don't want another one. Obviously, I can't control that, and they'll come or they won't. But I always felt like that gave me the boost to be on the same playing field with any company I could go compete against, and that they couldn't say, well, this is going really well. This is how we're doing this year. Now it's like, how are we going to pivot and do something different? So I had a chance to break in.
Welcome to Raw and Real Entrepreneurship, the show that dares to bring no-nonsense insight to those who have the courage to start, grow, and scale a business. I'm your host, Susan Sly. Well, what's up, Raw and Real Entrepreneurs? I hope you're having an amazing day wherever you are in the world. And so if you have ever thought about, the tech sector, real estate, figuring out a way where there isn't a way, then today's episode is absolutely for you. My guest, check it out. He is a real estate and technology investor, and he's combined his passions for both real estate and technology to be a co-founder and managing principal of Onyx Equities, LLC, with his partner, John Saraceno. And Onyx has become one of the most diversified and active real estate investment, management, development, and property service organizations in the New York area, which is highly competitive, my friends, if you've never been to New York. And he leads investor capital raising initiatives for the Onyx Phalanx Funds, as well as strategic planning, real estate technology development, and overall investment strategy. On top of everything, he is an incredible speaker. He's a blogger. He is an influencer and a philanthropist. So with that, Jon Schultz, welcome to Raw and Real Entrepreneurship. I'm so excited to have you.
Well, thanks for having me. This is exciting, and your show's awesome, and what you're doing to help people is awesome. I think, in this new world of communicating and us actually being able to do what we're doing right now is such a powerful thing for people, and I'm glad you're doing it, and I'm very happy to be on the show.
Well, John, I am so excited to have you here. And you and I have a mutual friend, Brandon Steiner. Brandon has been a repeat guest and he always keeps it raw and real. So I want to jump in with the first question. What was your first business?
So my first business. So I always was a real estate sort of minded person. Why? Because my father was a developer and he built office buildings. And when I had the chance to go to camp in the summers, I would choose to actually go work for my father on whether it's a construction site. I was just always fascinated about how things were made, built. And I guess, one of my character traits is being curious. So I had that at a young age. So for me, I always felt real estate was something I just had such an interest in for a couple of reasons. One, it's tangible, right? Like I watched my father build buildings from nothing in the ground to these gigantic, beautiful structures. And it was cool to see from, cradle to grave how that got done. The other thing is I never wanted to sit at a desk. Like one of my things about business was, yes, I love business, want to be in it, but I never want to sit in any one place too long. And real estate gave you that, right? You could go out and look at properties, see how things made from industrial real estate, office real estate, retail real estate. I mean, real estate is a core component of everything we do in our lives. I mean, I'm sitting right now in a building doing this podcast, right? When I leave here, I may go shopping and pick up some presents for Valentine's Day for my wife. So we use it all the time, and that's why I enjoy it so much.
So, John, there are a lot of misperceptions about real estate. So I would like to take you back in time to when you first started in the profession, right? So what would be something that is surprising to people? Like they look at you, you're so accomplished. If we went in the time machine, the way back, if we went in the way back and we went back to your early beginnings in real estate, what would something, if we could look at you now and think, oh my gosh, he's so accomplished, what would surprise us about your early beginnings? Did you make any mistakes? Do you?
Well, yeah, I mean, listen, I think that, I can look back now, which is the good thing, right? And sometimes we get so stuck in what we're doing in our little, sort of roadmap that we create for ourselves that, we don't let our subconscious look at ourselves in a way that it should. And at the beginning, when you first get out of school, when you want to get your first job, everything's the prove it model. Like, I got to prove that I can do this. I got to prove that I can be better than that next person. I got to prove that I can work longer hours than that next person. And I think that's all good because it's a focused approach to learning when you're young. But, as I got through my career, I realized that, it's not always the best model, because at the end of the day, we really don't control everything we think we do. And the more open I am to suggestion, which I think I was a little less open those days, I had my way of doing it and I wanted to achieve it so I could say I did it being young rather than someone helping me. So I think I probably didn't take enough help because I was stubborn and I wanted to say I did it myself. I had a very successful father. So, I had more of that actually, where I wanted to think that I could do it on my own and I was good enough, right? It's a whole good enough thing that we all go through. And I think, we continue to go through that our whole lives, right? And different things that we do and we try. So today, being that I see that my greatest accomplishments came from me listening, me asking for help, iterating, pivoting, trying, failing, and then ultimately it worked out the way it should have. And if I look back to see what that means, it means I was mostly wrong on what I thought it was going to do to work out the way it should have. So I guess, I don't know if that fully answers your question, but I think the listening thing, the being open to being helped, mentored, you just can't replace that, especially at a young age.
Did anyone take you aside and call you out on your crap?
Yeah.
People have over the years with me when I was young.
Yeah.
I was arrogant. Yeah.
Well, the one great thing, so like I just actually wrote a blog called Conflict is Necessary, right? Because we're all so scared to have a conflict with a friend, a family member, a relative, because then you're worried like, oh my God, are they going to like me anymore? Am I going to ruin my relationship? So you never, like, yours is raw and real. Like, relationships need to be raw and real, right? My best relationships were with someone who I actually had an argument with and got through it. So I think that for me, is something that's so important to have in business. And that's why mentors that I choose to go after are people that are raw and real and tell it like it is. I want someone to tell me what's bad, not good. Not that it's bad, how I can improve. How's that? It's a better word. What's my challenge to be better? Not just everything's good, because if those relationships don't help you grow, I mean, they don't challenge you to. And I think like learning about yourself is the most important thing you could do for your life and career. So the earlier in years that you get used to, wanting someone to give you that raw and real advice, the better. And it's not easy. And I wasn't good at it. It took a lot of practice, like everything else. You get a little sometimes upset when you hear things you don't want to hear, but it's only made me better, even though it's not always the greatest feeling.
But how did you turn it around? Like, was there one person, because we don't, I look at a lot of entrepreneurs, whether they're in their early 20s or they're, in their early 60s. And there are those people who are so arrogant that they don't take that feedback. But usually there's a refining moment, or there's one person who takes you aside and comes alongside and says, I can see your talent, but here's something you've got to change. So was there a person for you?
It's so funny how when you ask questions, things get brought up in your world. So I had an uncle. He was like a father to me. He was a second father. And why I loved him was he was the most authentic person I've ever met in my life. He lived life to the fullest. And that doesn't mean he did everything perfect, because like no one's perfect, right? Like we all have our stuff, but there was something about him that where maybe I wouldn't go to my father to be told something. It was just so easy to hear him in his authentic way tell me like, stop dwelling, John, get your ass out there and fix it. Or why do you think anyone really cares about you enough to think about you? Like, these are quotes that he would tell me. And I used to go to him once a month and just have coffee just so I could get a dose of him. And he was all through my 20s. And unfortunately, I still think about him to this day. He passed earlier in life than he should have. And I feel like he's with me all the time. But, he was definitely a game-changing voice in my head for real. And then also he still lives with me today. And I think that's another thing that's, you think about. You don't always want to hear the advice from people that you think you do. And sometimes searching out for that person that you just feel is so authentic and has that energy. And the other great thing about him, like I never felt he was judging me, regardless of what he said. So what he taught me is like, no one's really judging you. They're trying to help you, right? So you gotta get that stuff out of your head and just allow yourself to embrace. I even hate constructive criticism, just new ways to flow through what you're doing. That's a better way to say it.
It really is the perception. It's so funny because one of our big fans, raving fans, his name is Murray, and he's an investor and an entrepreneur. And I was at a cocktail party with Murray and his wife, and he's like, Susan, there's sometimes you just know, and you just keep going until the guest will answer. And I had a sense, John, that we needed to talk about your uncle, it turns out, because there was that person. And the other reason is, as people are listening, if you're not getting the results you want, step back and ask yourself, is there someone who you admire who's been trying to tell you something and you're just not listening? For me, over the years, I remember my friend David. David was a very successful investor. He was the lead trainer for T. Harv Eker. So, he'd have thousands of people in a room and breaking arrows on their throat. And it was David who actually taught me how to do the arrow break as a trainer. And one of the first times I met David, we just collided, John, because I was like, I could tell he was trying to break me down, because often personal development trainers are really good. They'll do that. And I said, I'm not going to be a notch in your belt. And then he looked at me and he said, I don't trust you. And I said, why don't you trust me? And he told me, and it changed my life because I realized that I wasn't showing up authentically in certain business situations. And that was like maybe 17 years ago. And so I thank him all the time, because there are those people in our lives and they're just like, sometimes it doesn't sit right with us, but it's exactly where we need to go.
And it's very interesting. So now that I'm bringing my uncle up and I'm seeing, you mentioned my partner who I love, John Saraceno, and he has those same traits. The more I'm thinking about it, I think it's why we're great partners. We respect each other. We've had a great career together, and he's like one of the other most authentic people I know. He says it how it is, and with empathy, and he's just such a great person, one of the most caring people I know. And I'm thinking back like, wow, like it actually shows up in other parts of your life if you embrace those types of traits. They show up in your life and they keep going, right? Even though my uncle's not here, other people will fill those gaps, those shoes, however you want to say it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for sharing that, because isn't it interesting that your uncle is this powerhouse in your life, or he was, God rest his soul, and now you have this partner who's not afraid to call you out, which obviously is making you better. How do you handle real estate? Is stressful. Let's just say it. Let's just call it. This is raw and real entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is stressful. How do you handle stress?
Listen, I do all the outside things that, I was told my whole life. I love working out. I play golf. I have hobbies. I try to do things that maybe is not my day job that has and lets me do and be creative. Because I love reading. I love doing creative things. I love all that. I think that helps. And I also feel just understanding, if you start thinking the world is for you, not against you, which is very hard in different times of your life and different times of where the world is. If you start saying that to yourself enough, you start believing it, right? Because I think we are what we say, and you don't worry as much. Like the stress actually dissipates. I also it's hard. It is always going to come. It's just, how do you make it last less? So like when a stressful situation comes in, I always I use breathing. I mean, like I'll literally start taking bigger breaths, deeper breaths, and I'll say, this is probably an illusion, and I'm having thoughts that probably are future thoughts that I'm going to be wrong anyway. Just take a step back and honestly see what really is happening. And so it's diffusing it. It doesn't go away. I wish there was some magic potion, but there is none. It's learning how to not let stress dwell too long continually, and understanding that most of the time, and I have a little journal I write, like my most stressful moments, I'll write down, this is what's happening. This is what I think. This is how I feel, right? Most of the time after that event, it's nothing. It's what happened. And I didn't have to feel all that. So why did I, right? So it's sort of more letting life come to you in that way, and not going out and letting your brain think of all these things that most likely are not going to appear or be true. But it's also learning how to, hit them head on. If it's there are real things that happen. It's just how you're going to deal with them, what questions you're going to ask yourself, and how are you going to move through it. I think that's how either people are always stressed or stress less. I don't think anyone's never stressed. I think that's probably not a real thing.
Well, I think Tony Robbins says this, like I'm stressed is the wealthy person's way of saying, like whatever they say. Like I can't remember what Tony says about it, but it's so funny because there's as entrepreneurs, there's this ethos of stress that we all kind of ride. And then suddenly when it's not there, we often look for ways to create more stress in our lives. I want to ask you, so we're living in some really interesting times, depending on when someone's listening to this, we have potentially Russia invading Ukraine, China invading Taiwan. We have inflation that hasn't been this high in 40 years. We have, like all this crazy going on. I want to go back to the recession. Right? So if you are listening to John and I, you can't see us, but we look really good for our age, like we do. But if you're on YouTube, you'll know. John obviously was in business during the recession. So Glenn Stearns is a great friend of mine. Glenn and Mindy, love them. He had an epic crash in the recession, but man, oh man, came back and just.
I watched his show, the Billionaire, whatever it was called. It was
Undercover Billionaire.
Yeah, he was so funny in that show. I mean, that was a great show. I liked it at least.
He almost died for real. So I'm going to ask the question, but I'll just share a quick story with you since, it's raw and real entrepreneurship. So we're watching the show and I have my littlest daughter, Emery. And I'm thinking, Glenn and Mindy are great friends of mine. Like, let's watch Mr. Stearns on TV. And so the episode where he's really sick and he's coughing in the car, Emery's like, oh my gosh, mommy, can you message Mrs. Stearns? Is he okay? So I'm messaging, she doesn't know it's pre-recorded, right? So I'm messaging Mindy. I'm like, Emery's really worried about Glenn. Anyway, I was talking to Glenn after. He almost died.
Oh my
God. And they wanted him to stop filming. He had pneumonia really badly. He was in the hospital. They wanted him to stop filming. He said, no, we're sticking with the timeline. And that's who he is. He is the nicest, kindest, smartest person I know.
Yeah, he seemed very cool in the show. It was a great. I really enjoyed the show. It was like a great show.
Well, we'll talk. All of my guests become really close friends. So I'll introduce you to Glenn.
Good.
So going back to the recession, right? That recession isn't going to be the last recession. Like I said, this pandemic isn't the last pandemic. We ebb and flow. So what did the last recession teach you that you're implementing now? And if you could turn it around and give advice to everyone listening.
Well, I'm going to give experience because my advice is probably crappy. I'll give you what I went through and hopefully it can resonate with you. Mm-hmm. So I'm old enough now to have been through some recessions, and no matter when they happen, they're not good. They don't feel good. Nobody wants them. But what I learned through them and my experience taught me is when everything's going well, right? It's easy. Like, so basically the best products win and they're easy and people are buying them. And if you're someone trying to break in as a new entrepreneur, it's CYA. It's like, I'm going to go with this product, not that product, because it's easy. We're making money. Everything's going well. I found during a recession, everyone goes back to an even playing field. because everything doesn't look good anymore. The companies that were doing well are also not doing as well, right? A lot of stuff gets unmasked during a recession that you didn't really think was happening. So I always felt a recession, and listen, I don't want them. I don't want another one. Obviously, I can't control that, and they'll come or they won't. But I always felt like that gave me the boost to be on the same playing field with any company I could go compete against, and that they couldn't say, well, this is going really well. This is how we're doing this year. Now it's like, how are we going to pivot and do something different? So I had a chance to break in. That was my mindset. It actually let me feel as a smaller entrepreneur that I can compete against much bigger companies. And it was all about how was I going to show and be different. And it made my creativity have to even be stronger, but it allowed me that opening. It's easy because no one wants to make a change, but in bad times, people are way more open to change. Like, oh my God, maybe we can do this differently. Oh my God, we have to do this differently. So that's my experience. And I remember the first one, and it allowed my company when I started it to actually get market share that I know for a fact I never would have gotten market share otherwise. So that's what I felt was something that worked for me.
I love that you said that. So I don't think your advice was crappy. I thought it was outstanding because it evens the playing field.
Yes.
And that can be said. I think that is, obviously everyone who knows the show, we make quote cards out of all the like mic drops that our guests have. That is a huge one right there, because when you think about it, whether it's what's going on with crypto right now, whether it's, what's going on with the stock market right now, you have, I think Google's going to do a 20-1, or is it 40-1 stock split? I can't remember.
I think it was 20.
Yeah, 20.
I'm not sure.
I'm a shareholder. I have to disclose all this stuff. So, they're doing a split. I'm sure Tesla will do another one soon. Apple, when they did their split, their most recent one, they're almost trading at what they were. But then when these things happen and these economic events happen, if you are a person who's diligent with your money, you're being smart about it, you're not going out and doing stupid things, you can enter a market that you might not have been able to enter. Now, let's not talk about buying a house right now or buying a car right now, but in other things, there's a reset happening. I love that you said that. It's an amazing shift.
Well, if you look at it, any great entrepreneur, the best stories are what didn't go well and how that made something happen that would have never happened if it didn't go well. I mean, how many people say, like, I won't change a thing? Like it was the worst thing that ever happened to me, but I will never change a thing. This is, and again, I don't want a recession, but they come. And you can look at it two ways. And I always feel like it's how you act and move forward through something that happens, not what is actually happening. Because you can go two ways. You can crawl up in a ball and do nothing, or you could say, maybe this is a chance for me to learn and grow and do something different. And I'd rather do that just because it makes me feel better, like I can actually have a little control over maybe something that is going to happen going forward. Yet, we all know that's an unknown, right? You just got to do, go in the flow and move forward. And, we'll see what happens. I mean, it's a big world out there with lots of change too. So I also think what's nice is, post-COVID, people are going to be way more used to changing things than they ever were before. Like, it amplified change. Most people are afraid of change. We had an unfortunate lesson of learning what dramatic change feels like, right? So, and there's all silver linings with it and for it. And also it was devastating and horrible and chaotic and you wish it would never happen. But I think, learning how to change and move through your life with a mindset that feels like it could be good for you is a really good, powerful thing. And if anything, it just decreases your stress and makes you happier longer. Because I believe our whole goal is figure out how to be happy the longest during the day that we possibly can. Because we're right. So that's a game, right? How do I do that, right? So and I wouldn't even say happy. I think it's joyful, right? Because happy could be anything, but how do you stay as joyful as you possibly can as long as you can all day? And a lot of that's doing things that you enjoy and having fun in your life.
How do you stay happy as long as you can throughout the day, right? And I think that that wisdom doesn't have anything to do with age. It has to do with applying the lessons we learn, the knowledge, and saying, okay, it happened. And to your point, when I was on your show and you did such a beautiful job in the interview,
Thank
yeah,
you.
I was homeless and broke and everything else, but I wouldn't go back and change it. It was so hard, but I wouldn't have the success I have now had I not gone through that, right? And I think it's that preparation piece that if we know it's very Pollyannish to think the economy is, that we're going to see, years and years and years of stock market gains. And even the day we're recording the show, the pre-market was down almost 200 points. And it's like, you can't get upset about that. You have to say, what is the opportunity today? And as an entrepreneur, go out there and get it. So let me ask you this. You have a incredible mindset. What trainers, what books, like for the people listening, they're like, oh my gosh, Jon is so positive. Not only is he successful, he's positive. What books, have made a difference for you? What trainers have really impacted your life?
I think so. Listen, the one good thing, I enjoy people. I want to be around people smarter than me, better than me. Even when I play golf, right? Like if I'm playing with low cappers, my game rises. Like if I'm in a gym training with someone that's way more in shape than me, it inspires me. So at a young age, and it was maybe easier because I do enjoy being around people, I built my mentor network. And it wasn't just at work. Like I wanted to find people that could support me in a way that, like, when I have those moments, like I'm not on my own dealing with it by myself. And like I've created an unbelievable web of people in that, arena. And some come in, some come out, some are for different reasons, purposes, nothing's fixed. Like that's the fixed mindset thing. Nothing's fixed. It's all flowing, but I'm constantly seeking out that premise. And I think without those people, it would have been harder for me to get through what I was going through at any one time, from family, friends, business networks. And I think that's like a critical component of me. So like I always have someone that I trust I can call and reach out to and just like spew my crap all over them as far as problems that I have for that day. And they'll either tell me, shut up, or they'll, and most of them just listen. But the bottom line is like having that as a resource is irreplaceable.
So I love that, the mentor network, right? And which is huge. And
I always say like creating Charlotte's Web, like my web of, people that are around me, that care about me, I know, not judging, and you'll find those. And listen, organization, like I've always joined like the organizations in the industries I'm in. I always wanted to be around helping the industry or community I'm involved in. I feel like when you're involved and you're giving, you just get so much more out of what you're doing every day when you sort of take the pursuit of business off the table and put the giving hat on, like, okay, I'm going to get a lot out of this industry. For me, how do I give back to it? Plus by creating a better, broader, bigger network. And when I was younger, I used to join the young person's networks within the networks because I felt it was a way I'd be able to meet a Susan one day because she's in that network and she's already accomplished, but I can go like put on an event or help on an event or try to add value to something that like I'm taking from, and then I'm going to meet someone that I, maybe wouldn't have. And that was one of the things that actually got me a lot of relationships I would have never had. And that also helped me build my network in a big way. So after I did one, I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool. So I sometimes it'd be 2 or 3, and I felt very nourished by it because I felt like I was helping and I wasn't just taking, especially at a young person. Like all you can do is like sort of like take from what you're learning from the, you're in a process of learning your career, right? So I felt that was a way that I felt like I could also contribute while I'm learning, and I still do it to this day.
I love that. So let me ask you this. The Wall Street Journal on the weekend, they always feature someone and they'll show their personal board of directors. There's always four people there, right? So it's really, John, for me, when I look at that, I'm like, okay, who is my personal board of directors right now? So Harvey McKay is my personal mentor. So he's like right at the top of that. I have a new person in my life. She's the head of AI for a massive company. There are very few women in AI, so we're like unicorns. So like she's on that list now too. So rapid fire, if I was reading about you in the Wall Street Journal on the weekend and they're listing your four people who are your personal board of directors, who are they?
Wow. I have so many. I mean, an organization I'm in, which is a CEO organization, YPO, I have that actually, and they're amazing. But personal, listen, my partner is one of them. Comes bang right into my mind. My father, God bless him, still very active, and he's one of them. Let me think who else. I got to tell you, my wife, she's
Awesome.
one of them. We have many conversations that are amazing. And then for the fourth, I would say everyone else, because like I said, I don't have just four that are set in stone, except people that I'm around every day. I move around and I try to learn from everybody. But those people I mentioned are the people that I speak to the most. And I could say that's who it is.
I'm going to add my husband to my, you just inspired me to do that because he is my person. There's no question.
Yeah,
He's
listen.
Brilliant man.
Yep.
Yeah. What's your wife's first name?
Allison.
Allison, shouts out to you. I can't wait to read the Wall Street Journal, and your name is going to be there. It's going to be awesome.
Absolutely.
John, you are doing incredible things, and some of the things I'm taking away from this show are, I love what you said about a recession is a great reset. It's an equalizer. It shifts the opportunity zone, and that, I love that narrative. It was huge, and I hope everyone's taking this away. Start to quantify it. I love anything we can quantify. At MIT, I always joke, like, if they'll put math on anything, so I'll do this too. So start to figure out, like, how happy are you every day? Is it, a minute, 2 minutes, maybe it's zero, whatever it is, and start to increase that. I love what you said about that, John, because it's huge. That's something people can take away. And then the third thing is get your personal mentorship web of people. And who are those four people, right? And if you don't have them yet, make that your goal this year, because it's so true that your network determines your net worth. That's the bottom line. And I know everything in my life that I've ever achieved has come through my network. It's that, that's it. So John, you are absolutely amazing. Thank you for being here. Any final words to the audience?
Don't take yourself too seriously, because I try not to. And this is all one big fun, hopefully, game of life that, doesn't last that long. And, as you get older, you feel that more. So, but enjoy yourselves. Have a great 2022. And hopefully everyone on the show will find at least one thing to direct themselves towards that gets to that being happy more every day. And that'd be terrific.
I love it. Well, thanks so much, John, for being here. And check out John on social, on Twitter. It's Jon Schultz _Onyx, Instagram.com/Street Schultz. I love, that's awesome. And then he's also on LinkedIn as Jon Schultz1. So check him out, follow him on social, tag us. And if you are on iTunes, John and I would love a 5-star review. I've got lots of them. Let's keep the party going. If this episode has been helpful, please do share it. Tag me on all the social. With that, God bless. Go rock your day, and I'll see you in a future episode of Raw and Real Entrepreneurship.